Is there a coordinated attack on meat? On real meat, I guess I should say, as opposed to fake meat or bugs. That is what we're going to be discussing today. I'm going to discuss some different examples and theories that are out there, and then I'm going to give you some interesting conclusions. So, recently, meat production has faced a series of massive challenges. Regulatory changes I'm going to tell you about, disease outbreaks, global policy shifts that are advocating for alternative proteins. And some try to say, oh, this is all just a coincidence. Well, is it? That's what we're going to figure out. The simultaneous occurrence of these issues makes you wonder about whether there is a coordinated effort to influence our food choices and our food availability on a global scale. So let's take a look at some evidence from various reports and articles to figure this out. Is there a possibility that there is a deliberate strategy by someone somewhere aimed at reducing our meat consumption? So I don't know how aware you are of this, but in the 2023 omnibus bill, there is a what seems to be a regulatory push against traditional meat. There's a controversial measure in that omnibus bill of $15 million for the electronic tracking of livestock. And it's made it all the way through Congress, and it's raising fears among critics that the new system could be weaponized by the government to limit beef consumption. In 2023, the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service proposed a rule requiring cattle and bison to have visually and electronically readable tags with records entered into a database that would be accessible to the federal government. This means RFID tags, scannable tags, trackable tags on all sexually intact red meat animals. At the time, the mandate was hidden in, piles and piles and piles of paper in this omnibus bill. But here are a few of the concerns. One rancher was quoted as saying that they are going to use this registry of animals as a taxing mechanism to eventually control the livestock. Representative Thomas Massey from Kentucky was quoted as saying in the European Union, they used these measures under the guise of climate change lies to limit the cattle supply. And if they do that here, it will destroy our industry. He went on to say if the tag mandate is implemented, it will be the key to open the door to the gas chamber for independent ranching. And he owns livestock in Kentucky. He also said that it could lead to the erosion of the industry. The left want to ban cattle, and before you can ban anything, you need a registry. You need to know where it's at and who owns it, and that's why they want to tag cattle, he said. So now let's fast forward to the present. The bill has passed. We now have this omnibus bill. U.S. Senator Mike Rounds just recently, May 9th, introduced legislation to block this mandate, arguing that it represents federal overreach and imposes unnecessary expenses on farmers and ranchers. According to this senator, South Dakota, which I guess is where he's from, cattle producers do not need bureaucrats in Washington dictating how they should manage their livestock. It's their private property. Various agricultural associations, including the U.S. Cattlemen's Association, back up this statement as well, saying that mandatory electronic ID tags infringe on personal property rights and would cost the industry tens of millions of dollars without providing any market recovery. So, RFID tags, a registry of all red meat edible animals. Okay, and then, well, that sounds a little extreme, but not that major. I mean, I think it's a little bit much, but just wait. And it's not very fair to small farmers. They will be pushed out of the market. But let's move on to the next thing on this list. So at the same time that we've got the RFID thing going on where they want to be able to track and register all of our meat producing animals, we now have lots and lots of different diseases going on, and they're getting worse. So the USDA has confirmed that cow to cow transmission has played a role in the spread of bird flu in dairy herds across multiple states. The USDA's investigation into all of this has indicated that the virus is spreading between herds through cattle movement, and that the disease has now even jumped back from cows to poultry. Despite this, the USDA has not imposed the same level of movement restrictions on cattle as it has on poultry, which kind of suggests a selective approach in how they're managing these threats. Now, of course, I am in no way suggesting that someone somewhere might have developed or tweaked a virus that can mutate and move suddenly between different types of animals because, that's never happened. So I don't want you to think I'm suggesting that. But virus has gone from bird to cow to a man. A dolphin has contracted it, cats have contracted it, and the cows are now giving it to each other and then back to the birds. And this virus is spreading fast. If this is actually in people right now, according to a Yale doctor, um, it would make 2020's situation look insignificant. In the short term, there is very little threat, said Yale Medicine infectious diseases specialist Scott Roberts, MD. In the long term, in the coming years or decades, however, I'm much more concerned. He gives two reasons. One is that there has been a mortality rate of about 50% in the almost 900 people around the world who've been infected with the bird flu. Another reason for this concern is that bird flu is now being detected in new animal species. In addition to outbreaks in cows, which is a relatively new development for the bird flu virus, there have been sporadic infections in some wild mammals. He goes on to say it's natural to wonder if it's only a matter of time before this virus is able to spread among humans. So we have a virus also infecting the meat we eat. Chickens, turkeys, cows, all susceptible. And this virus, what's so bad about it is that this virus is mutating. That's what the big issue is. We still don't have any definitive information on whether or not it's safe to eat meat from infected animals after it's been cooked. The CDC says the public risk is low, but they also told us that pasteurized milk would be 100% clean. And then they found dead byproducts of the virus and milk being sold in stores. But wait, there's more. The chronic wasting disease, or the zombie disease, as you've heard me talk about it before, is also ramping up. And this is adding to the concerns and the questioning of whether or not our consumable meat is being purposely hijacked. This was first identified in captive deer at a Colorado biological research facility in the 1960s. So these were tame deer that caught it at a biological research facility in the 60s. Hmm. It has since spread to 34 US states and 5 Canadian provinces. So let me just mention that one more time. It's the 60s. All kinds of freaky stuff was being done in the name of science back then, with little to no care about the consequences of what people were doing. Here are these poor deer, and they were a tame herd that was kept at the biological research facility. Suddenly, magically, out of nowhere, one of them develops this non treatable, 100% fatal zombie disease that eats away the brain. So, fast forward to today. The disease is always fatal. There's no vaccine, there's no treatment. The high infection rates in both wild and captive populations make this disease even more scary. And I find it interesting. I went and asked an AI bot, because I like to do this from time to time. about the interesting way this disease started. And here was the quote I received back from an AI bot. The origin of CWD, or chronic wasting disease, in a controlled research environment raises suspicions about its artificial introduction and subsequent spread. Even AI can see it. So now we have our cattle. Can't eat that. Can't eat birds. Now we can't even hunt our own meat because you can't tell if that deer or that elk has this disease until 1 to 2 years after it contracts it. But there's more. And when I give you the final conclusion on all of this, you're going to be absolutely amazed. But before I forget, if you would do me a huge favor and like the video, and if you really like the video, subscribe. Thanks. All right, so the Columbia River watershed in southeastern British Columbia has been declared an infected area for whirling disease, a parasite that causes deformities in fish and has a high mortality rate. So you're saying to yourself, all right, Nick, what the heck is whirling disease? Well, it apparently is a parasite that gets into fish like salmon, trout, and whitefish. It's been around a while, since the 1800s, but not in our country. And I doubt most of us had ever heard of it before. There is no cure for it. Officials once again say there's no risk to humans, but it is killing our fish. The inspection agency says that the disease has a 90% mortality rate. And once introduced, elimination of this parasite from a wild fish population isn't usually ever possible. It has also been found in the Yellowstone River, and it is believed to be a major reason that the rainbow trout in Colorado have declined in population. North American fish have little or no natural resistance to this parasite, unlike the fish in Europe, because they've only recently begun getting exposed to it. So now let's look a little bit more globally at global concerns and some shifts in policy. The World Health Organization, the World Organization for Animal Health, the UN Food and Agricultural Organization have all highlighted the evolving nature of the H5N1 avian flu virus, as I told you. These organizations have emphasized the need for real-time monitoring because they're afraid it's going to infect a broader range of species and generate new genotypes. So in other words, it means that the virus can affect many different types of animals, not just one specific kind. Because it can spread to so many different animals, the virus has more chances to mix and to change, creating new versions of itself or mutating. And at the same time, Uncle Klaus and his whole group at that forum of world people has been promoting a shift towards alternative proteins, including insects and lab grown meat, as part of its sustainability agenda. So, is there the possibility of coordination between these coincidental viruses, diseases, and these parasites attacking all of our edible meat, and certain organizations push for eating bugs? When you actually spell this all out and put it all together at once, the simultaneous events of regulatory pressures, the disease outbreaks, and global policy shifts, it becomes apparent that these events might not be purely coincidental. And of course, the economic and the social impacts of all of this will be the expense and the difficulties that will be caused by these new rules and health measures. They're putting a lot of pressure on traditional meat producers. Because of this, other types of proteins, like plant based or lab grown meat or insects, might start to look, unfortunately, more attractive and affordable at the same time that our economy is horrid. So, in other words, they're going to price meat beyond our ability to buy it. And when they do that, they will force us into their agenda of eating plant based meat with whatever God knows is in it, the lab grown meat with whatever God knows is in that, and of course, insects. So, is this a coordinated food war? Big global organizations are working together in a way that suggests this is not just a series of bad luck. And wait till you hear about how amazing of a series it would be if it was a series of bad luck. Okay, so this is the part. Hang on, because this is the most important part. So I asked a chatbot. Actually, I asked two separate chatbots. After outlining all of the issues that are happening, where they came from, or whatever history I had on them, shared it with these chatbots. And I asked if it was possible that all of these things could just be a coincidence. So here was the answer I got. Actually, and both of them said it. Um, said, let's look at the combined probability of these events happening independently. The USDA's RFID tracking proposal. This is usually it's unusual to say the least. Cross species bird flu, a highly virulent virus capable of crossing species boundaries, is exceptionally rare. The emergence of chronic wasting disease and how it's grown so quickly. And it's a rare prion disease. And they felt that it growing in a group of tame deer was very, very unusual. Both of the bots did. But it gives rise to the question of how the disease in those tame deer went and infected all of these wild deer, and now all of a sudden is just blooming into this huge issue and situation. Whirling disease. This is another rare disease in our area affecting fish populations. That is very, very unusual. And the global push for alternative proteins, this effort to shift our dietary habits from traditional meat to alternative proteins like insects and lab grown meat. So, what the chatbot concluded was the following. It said if we assume a probability of 0.1%, because all of these things are pretty rare, for each event occurring in a given year, any given year, which is already generous, it said, for such rare events, we can calculate the combined probability of all of these events happening simultaneously as 1/10 trillionth of a percent. This would be similar to someone winning a major lottery jackpot, getting struck by lightning, being dealt a royal flush in poker, and then being stung by a bee and dying, even though they weren't allergic to bees, all in 1 year. But yeah, I'm the crazy conspiracy nut. So, what do y'all think? Tell me what your thoughts are. Is this a conspiracy? Is this a coincidence of a whole bunch of different things happening or something more? Let me know in the comments.